life in Afghanistan under the Taliban.
Taliban leaders are claiming they have taken control of the Panjshir province. That was the final stronghold of resistance forces that were left in Afghanistan. And this morning, CNN is getting its first look at life outside of Kabul under Taliban rule. And Nick Robertson is joining us now with that. This is really the story. In fact, it's kind of the unseen story of what is happening outside of the capital for Afghans, Nick.
Yeah, Brianna, we're hearing a lot about waiting to find out what sort of government the Taliban is going to put in place. They've promised for it to be inclusive. We know they're likely to keep their supreme leader, their commander of the faithful, but little else is sort of really coming from the Taliban. But if you get out into the country, you can actually see how they're governing, and they're putting their Islamic principles first.
Inside the new Afghanistan, in rural Paktika province far from Kabul, the Taliban's provincial governor has called a meeting. No women to be seen. Local village elders and tribal chiefs listen. A young boy takes a selfie. Much has changed since the Taliban were last in charge. Smartphones and social media. But poverty, still the country's biggest problem.
We have many expectations, and we are praying the Taliban will deliver.
The week after Kabul fell, a local journalist took a road trip for us to see what was happening outside the capital. Taliban guides showed him the way. At the border, changes already underway. Part charm offensive, giving traders what they want, longer opening hours at the border, and part crackdown, keeping men and women apart.
Let me tell you, before we had one single line for both men and women. Now we have two. They are kept apart.
Pakistani officials easing into the new relationship, backing the segregation. On this journey, two things become clear: Afghanistan's near financial collapse and the hard switch to religious rule.
Okay, that doesn't sound progressive. No shit. Guys, if you thought that these fucking fundamentalists were going to be progressive, I mean, you have another thing coming for you, dude. Yeah, obviously not. Like, I hope you don't misunderstand. When I'm covering the Taliban, I'm not saying they're like beacons of progress. I'm simply stating that women in Afghanistan are forced to deal with shitty alternatives regardless of who's in charge. And it's basically harm reduction at this point to get the United States to evacuate and withdraw their forces so that there is more regional stability under yet another oppressive, incredibly oppressive, and horrible and fundamentalist regime.
Spotting a crowd, the team stop.
Following the Quran fundamentalist is not a following of the Quran. Okay? All matter of religion is subject to interpretation. If you think that, like, these guys are following the Quran to a T, then I guess you think the Westboro Baptist Church is following Christianity to a fucking T. But maybe you're an Reddit atheist Andy. Wraithiest. Come on, how was women's faith the same before? It should have been much better. No. Especially for women living in areas like this outside of Kabul, their lives were fucking worse overall. They still had Taliban control. There was constant fucking fighting. And then sometimes dudes that are decked out in like American camo would come in, break their fucking doors down, and just rip into the houses. So no, it wasn't better overall. Their lives were fucked across the board. At least it's not a war zone now. On top of the religious fundamentalism. Motherfuckers think like America was, I don't know, a beacon of progress in the country when we killed 72,000 civilians in Afghanistan. That's crazy.
It's a provincial courthouse. Inside, local leaders careful to praise the new boss. We used to have to go a long way to get to a Taliban court, he says. Now we have one right here. The new judge in town, quite literally, laying down the Taliban law, their interpretation of Islamic law.
See, even fucking CNN's exclusive reporter is saying their interpretation of the Quran. Except chatters in here are like, no, that's the only interpretation. So strange that like so many Muslim countries don't follow that interpretation, but hey, what's up?
We asked the previous judges how they used to work. They said they were following the law of the land, not the Sharia.
Yeah, I love when homies wear gold watches, which is literally not something you can do as a male in Islam. It's haram to wear gold watches or gold jewelry as a male.
Yeah. In Islamic Emirate, all court proceedings.
Hassan, what is jihad exactly? Really curious as a Muslim. Jihad just means struggle. It can mean struggle against emancipation, or it can mean fucking really curious, just curious Andy. Or it can mean whatever these fucking psychos' interpretation of jihad is, which is like spreading Islamic fundamentalism all around the world.
Are according to the Sharia law.
Under Taliban rule in the 1990s, the Taliban's Sharia law led to public amputations for thieves, stoning of adulterers, even hanging. But in the local market, Sharia law is not the big concern. It's making a living.
Business is very bad. We don't know who is in charge. Only low-ranked people are here. We don't know if we can trust them. They are not telling us anything, and the situation has not improved. Prices are going up.
In the barber's shop, business is down. It's not only me, he says, but business is bad in the market. It's not as good as before. They're not alone. The local pharmacist is also struggling. Stocks already depleted under the last government. The clinic's maternity nurse, also worried about finances, says the previous government didn't pay her for the past 4 months and she can't afford to go home. Closer to Kabul.
Wait, I'm confused. The previous government didn't finance the maternity ward? Wait, how could that be? That was the American puppet government that literally fucking... Wait, how could that be? That's so strange that the previous American puppet state was also not doing great by the women in faraway regions of Afghanistan away from Kabul. That's so strange.
Kabul, another doctor, more problems. Day and night, he says, we get 25 to 30 patients. And we have just one doctor and one nurse for them all. Outside the hospital, the Taliban claim an alternate reality.
Before you didn't know whether the doctor was coming or not, but now they are there for you all the time.
On this trip, the Taliban's prioritizing of Sharia law and bits of charm offensive seemingly missing Afghans' most important needs, a secure livelihood.
And that's what's got countries like Pakistan on the borders of Afghanistan worrying. Quite simply, if there isn't economic success, if the Taliban can't run the country properly and provide for everyone's living, then all those people, or a lot of those people, are just going to come to the borders, try to get into Pakistan and the other countries, possibly make it on as refugees to Europe. And that's a destabilizing influence here. And Pakistan says it just can't afford it.
And they can't afford it. So what are they doing there, Nick?
Well, the Pakistan's head of intelligence, the ISI chief, went to Kabul to meet with the Taliban on Saturday. He came back, we didn't get an accurate description or a full description of what he was doing, but that's where we learnt about some of the problems that the Afghan government is having in deciding who should run the country, or the Taliban. The Taliban are having problems. Apparently, they've got military commanders who are disputing about who should be the defense minister. There are other issues in there as well. You know, Pakistan's sort of trying to be the diplomatic middle ground at the moment, hosting, I think it's the Italian foreign minister today. They had the British, the Germans, the Dutch foreign ministers all last week. So I think that when you see what the Pakistanis are doing, and yesterday having a virtual summit with all the neighbors, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Iran.
They literally had the head of ISI in Kabul. I wonder what he was doing. The head of the Pakistani intelligence was in Kabul doing meetings. He was just probably chilling.
China as well on that virtual summit. They're really trying to get a diplomatic initiative going, which really says engage with the Taliban, the international community. But at the moment, there's no real evidence that's happening. And when you have planes sitting on the runway in Mazar-e-Sharif, people who are trying to get out, and the Taliban had agreed to that, not able to get out, it's all, you know, it's just raising the stakes and raising the concerns.
We're going to talk about Mazar-e-Sharif in just a second, Nick. With the emphasis on Sharia law from the Taliban, any sense from the people you've spoken to or the sources that we still have inside the country what the situation is for women in some of these outer provinces?
You know, look around that big crowd. That's what struck me. I used to go into Afghanistan when the Taliban were in control in the late 90s, and women were just sidelined from society. Look around that big crowd at the beginning of our report there. Not a woman to be seen. The Taliban just don't want to see them really engaging actively in society. Yes, they say they'll get an education, but the strictures they're putting on education now, they're saying that girls will have to go to separate classrooms to boys in schools. They'll have to wear sort of full black covering. If their classrooms are small, they can put a curtain in the classroom between boys and girls. So they're really marginalizing the role of women that has done so much to come along in the past 20 years. The small protests over the weekend by a group of...
Can we stop pretending that Islam's a modern religion? Yeah, that's why there's like 8 Muslim countries have had like female leaders before the United States of America because of how fucking anti-women and how anti-modern they are. Including Turkey. Your mic audio is effing intermittently? I don't know what you mean. But I haven't heard it from anyone else. I didn't know your chat had so much anti-Islam sentiment. What the fuck? Welcome to America, my friend. Welcome to the fucking West, dude. That's 20 years of anti-Muslim radicalization that you have to work to undo.